Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say at the end, bonitos to all of our listeners in Latin America and across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on the beautiful. January the 22nd, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, everybody in the South and all over the U.S. is living in a world of anticipation because the South is the big city tonight in New Orleans once again, where everybody is expecting Zion Williams to make his NBA debut.
Well, he may make the debut, but the last time we had such big anticipation for Zion, I think even President Obama showed up at a game with Duke, and he's always been kind of a, you ever have fireworks, and you're supposed to have fireworks and they kind of a dud. I hope the young man has a lot of success. He certainly would be, remarkable if he can be what everybody's made him out to be. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV. Also, a lot of the good old boys are following us on a program called Fire TV. Now, I tried to do my Fire TV. Doesn't mean you got to set your TV on fire, Big C, to watch it. Your thoughts?
Well, everything is hot on Fire TV, Charlton. You got to learn how to jailbreak it so that it works properly.
Okay, I understand that. I had a guy that he could drive any car in the world. I said, man, how do you drive so many cars? You don't even have keys. He said he would just fire it up, Big C. You could also fire up the Big C Sports Show. Really appreciate that. I want to also make sure that we give out our national military hotline, also for civilians, for people who need help. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 for people who need help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we think about our veterans and we want to celebrate them every day, we have to think about mental illness in this country. It does not discriminate, regardless of age, gender, race, or age, Charlton. Mental problems are, abound in the U.S., and many of those lead to suicide. So the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there, Charlton. Many of our veterans have come back from battles across the sea.
Yeah.
And they've had mental problems when they return and don't know where to turn to, Charlton. And unfortunately, many of them have turned to that disease called suicide. So the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there, hoping to stem the tide. We got to find a way, though, to get every veteran and everyone else access to a cell phone so they can call the 800 prevention number, Charlton.
800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. We talk so much about football, and you were asking about, what are we going to do waiting for the Super Bowl to kick off. I was watching some replays of the 49ers and also the Kansas City Chiefs. It's when Joe Montana and Marcus Allen lined up in the same backfield for Kansas City, and you had Ricky Waters and Steve Young in the backfield for the 49ers, and even Jerry Rice was on the field, as well as a lot of great players that were playing for both teams. And it just shows me that they're still watching the game that was several decades ago, Big C, but it's still football rings king. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, many of those games, I think you probably saw that on a DVD or something. They're going to run a lot of replays of the Chiefs and the 49ers getting up to the Super Bowl players from the past that are no longer in the league. But what's relevant, Charlton, are the two teams that are playing next Sunday.
Yeah.
Those teams have players that have no, semblance to those teams that you talked about today, Charlton. And a lot of the young players, other than seeing those guys on highlight reels, really don't understand what they meant to the NFL.
Yeah, they really have a lot of great players, some Hall of Famers in those games. But I do want to open today's show, as we talked about Zion Williamson and what it means for the whole state of Louisiana or the city of New Orleans. I know they need something to hang their hopes on. They've always seemed to be disappointed at the end of the year when it comes to football, at least in the NFL, with the New Orleans Saints having, it seems like the last 3 years they've exited the playoffs on just a conspicuous play, whether it's a push-off, pass interference not call. That's with the Rams. Also, the play that happened up in Minnesota where Diggs caught the ball that no one tackled him. As you know, the DBs closed their eyes on that play. And then we just saw, again, in the playoffs against the Minnesota Vikings at home, there was no reason for them to lose that game other than things happen like that. So with New Orleans, this is a city that has so much flavor, Big C. Can they build their hopes on Zion? I still think it's a football town, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, New Orleans has always been a football town, but, you know, when you look at sports is at a point is that you need something that moves the needle, regardless of where you are. The NBA ratings are down this year. We haven't had an anticipation like this for a first game in 17 years since LeBron rookie year against the Sacramento Kings when he made his NBA debut.
Yeah.
And now this is much anticipated. Ever since the ping pong ball dropped and the Pelicans got the first pick, everyone's been anticipating this night. Zion had the knee injury that put it on hold for the first half of the season, and they've been very conscious of getting the young man on the floor. But this is must-see TV tonight. I know last year in college basketball, they had the Zion Cam. He was the face of college basketball. They want him to be one of the faces of the NBA moving forward. They got a lot of pieces that they've put around it. Brandon Ingram has been playing lights out, averaging 32 points a game over his last 3 games. So he's ready for the Zion Williams debut. And when we think about television, what is there in sports that makes you watch? It has to be something great. I mean, there's NBA games on every night.
All the time.
But it has to be must-see TV to make you tune in.
I want to get the feeling from you because I still recall when the NBA, before it took off and became great, I remember watching, it was Magic Johnson and Larry Bird in Michigan State and Indiana State playing for the college national basketball championship. And it was, played late in the middle of the night. And whatever happened to those two things that made basketball grow, it created really what people may not think about publicly, but it created a black versus white. Most white Americans, they rooted for Larry Bird. Most African Americans, they rooted for Magic Johnson. We know how the country's always divided on race. Zion Williamson, we saw him play at Duke, but we never saw him win a championship, and we never saw him play, in the NCAA finals. But we saw them get close, and we know he got the benefit of many doubts. But do you feel that you need an adversary to be great? They need to build, East Coast, West Coast, North versus South. All we have is Zion, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, not in today's NBA. You don't need an adversary to be great. LeBron James has been great ever since he's been in the NBA, and every team that he plays is his adversary. When you think about the Golden State Warriors, what they went on a 5-year run doing in the NBA, it wasn't about who they were playing. It was about when the Golden State Warriors were on, you found a reason to go watch an NBA game. There are 30 teams in the NBA, and there are 20 teams in the NBA that you really don't care if they're on television. And New Orleans has been one of those ever since they come back to New Orleans. And so when you talk about rivalries, the NBA has been a long time since the NBA had rivalries. We always will talk about the Magic Bird scenario, but that helped catapult the NBA into primetime prominence. But what we have now is individualism in the NBA because of social media. The Golden State Warriors proved that. It was just the Golden State Warriors. They had Steph Curry, they had Klay Thompson, they had Kevin Durant, they had Draymond Green. But it was the Golden State Warriors that you tuned in to see. They're still the Golden State Warriors now. But that team has been disbanded through injuries and moving on, Charlton. So they're not the same splash that everybody wants to see on television. They can play any night of the week. They're not must-see television. That's what New Orleans and the NBA is trying to create with Zion. I don't know if Zion will ever be a superstar in the NBA, but if he can get to the plateau where he's averaging over 20 points a game and close to double digits in rebounds, then he will be as good as advertised coming into the NBA.
Well, let me ask you this thought then. When LeBron came in, there was really no LeBron versus anybody because he didn't play college basketball. But what happened with Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, they built up, they were like the the appetizer for a meal when you go to the restaurant. They were the appetizer through college basketball. College basketball obviously was smart enough to pit these two guys together and against each other. One from a big town and the other from East Lansing, the other from French Lick, Indiana. And it just built country boy versus, city players and the black versus white thing. So they built the league together. I know that, obviously, LeBron James, when he came into the league, Big C, it was already built up. I mean, maybe he's taken over from where Michael Jordan left off. Michael Jordan took over from where, I could say Magic Johnson left off. There was Dr. J, there was Kareem, Lou Alcindor. There's so many players. So it's already been great. But will it make New Orleans great? Because they were talking about leaving when their owner had passed away a couple of years ago. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, this is what they need. They need an infusion of young stars. They need to be competitive. They need to make the playoffs. When you think about that's what success is in the NBA, is making the playoffs and getting out of the first round.
Yeah.
Zion has the ability, along with the other players that they have in place, Ingram, Ball. Those young players are ready to play. They have been playing outstanding basketball the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And they need Zion's infusion. I think the enthusiasm that he will bring to the arena and the city will help the motivation of the rest of the players on the team. And that's what players look for. They look to be driven by the electricity and energy of the crowd every night. You can go to a lot of NBA games and you'll never see a fan get up off his seat. But that's what Zion is bringing potentially to New Orleans, is that energy that everybody's been looking for. And you saw what he did when he was at college in Duke, even though it was just one short season.
Yep.
And so many one-and-done players are in the NBA now. Zion is looking – and when you think about Magic Johnson, he was one and done. Michael Jordan was one and done.
Yeah.
LeBron never went. Kobe never went. So it's not a precedent that you have to go to college to be a superstar, but by going to college, it brings you that automatic following from all the alumni and former athletes of that university and the boosters, Charlton. They're right there cheering for you, and people have a clip of what potentially you can bring to the NBA from what you did at Duke.
Duke has done so much. Coach Krzyzewski, or Kujawuski, as they call him in one of his TV commercials from back in the day, Big C. I remember the Christian Laettner turnaround shot that beat Kentucky. I believe that was right around 1991, 92. And they've always been there on the cusp. I remember when they played the great Jerry Tarkanian and the Running Rebels from UNLV. And there was always this UNLV, they had people to hate them. Even though people say, why would you hate the number one team? Sometimes America loves to build you up, and they love to tear you down. And I don't want to see that happen to Zion. But just like we said, Magic and Bird had that rival, East Coast, West Coast, Boston, Los Angeles. They haven't really found anyone to pit against Zion Williamson. So all they can really do is aim him in the direction of maybe taking over when LeBron steps down. Or would you not agree with that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the NBA does not need individual player rivalries now because everybody is marketed.
Yeah.
When you think about Boston and LA, they had the legacy of winning championships between those two cities, Charlton. They had been a bitter rival. And even when they came into the NBA, they didn't match up right off the bat. LA played the 76ers in Magic Johnson's rookie year for the NBA title. So it wasn't a Bird Magic thing. When they finally did meet up, Charlton, in a championship, they could bring the history from what they had in college.
Yeah.
And that's how it paralleled to what they were doing in the NBA.
Yep.
Now that you have Zion in the NBA, there's no rivalries. When you look across the board in the NBA, have you seen a rivalry of players in the last 5 years? No. You might have had a rivalry with Cleveland and Golden State in the finals.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's no rivalry in the NBA. You look at the championship last year, there was no rivalry between Toronto and Golden State. People still rooted for Golden State even though they were injury-plagued. Toronto won the championship. What did that do for the NBA interest-wise? No one really cares about Toronto.
Yeah.
No one's dying to see Toronto on television.
I'm sorry, Canada. We got
Golden State Warriors were the NBA champions. Their rivalry was against the NBA.
Yeah. Big C, I got some friends in Canada. That's why they named Canada after the Big C Sports Show, Big C. But we love our Canadian friends. You never know when you need some free health care, Big C. But I do know out here in L.A., they build the Boston, the East Coast, West Coast. Now it's the battle of L.A. Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, Davis, and Paul George. So they always try to add some of that in. San Francisco Giants, L.A. Dodgers. they've always had that the Oakland Raiders, Kansas City Chiefs. It used to be back in the day, and maybe it coming around to that again, the 49ers and the LA Rams. They've always tried to build that USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, Texas, and they had the Alabama, Auburn. So those kind of things. And the final thought I want to ask you on this, because New Orleans was about to leave. We know that. We know the Seattle, the Supersonics, they left and went down to Oklahoma City. The Sacramento Kings, they were mentioned to leave many, many times. They came out from Kansas City, Missouri, and before that they were in Rochester. We know that the Memphis Grizzlies moved from Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada. We love you, Canada. And they moved down to Memphis. This team was about to leave, and they had what they thought Anthony Davis was going to be the guy that was going to be the face of their franchise. He decided to go to L.A. to play with LeBron James. So if he doesn't make the splash that people want him to make, is this franchise still on the brink of saying, well, you know what? We got to get out of town and go other places like other teams have done, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, this franchise has left New Orleans before. That's what the Utah Jazz is, Charlton.
Yeah.
The Utah Jazz was originally the New Orleans Jazz, so it's moved out of that city before.
Yeah.
I don't think that the NBA is in any kind of fashion wanting this team to leave, because where do you put him at?
Yeah.
Zion will make an impact in the NBA. He's like a lot of other rookies that come into the league. You can't expect a rookie to become the face of the league instantly, because he's out there against grown men who've been working to keep their jobs, and they're not looking to lose their job because some rookie showed up, Charles, and they're not looking to be post-riding. He will make some splash plays, just like everybody in the NBA. But when you talk about those teams you talked about with rivalry, you're talking about something that's existed over 50 years with those rivalries of those teams that you talked about. So they have a long-standing understanding. They've been rivalries long before Zion was ever born. So, looking to build a rivalry, New Orleans and Zion is not going to build a rivalry with any individual or any other team in the NBA.
Well, I hope that they have enough to keep the organization in town. I know that New Orleans is a great city. A lot of people love the food. They love the culture. They love so many things that make that city have a lot of flavor. And I would hope that they can have a winning NBA basketball franchise. I just don't know how easy that's going to be, because he is playing in the Western Conference. And in order to get over in the Western Conference, you got to get over on a lot of people. I don't know if this is going to happen, but I hope he does make a big enough splash in New Orleans to make sure that everybody's happy there. I want to run down tonight's NBA schedule, Big C. We have the OKC Thunder playing at the Orlando Magic, and they got over on Houston again last night, Big C. So much for trading your best player, and then he comes back to town and can't win in Westbrook. The 76ers are playing. And my friends in Canada, I want Canada to know it's Big C that says who cares about Toronto. I care about Toronto, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you talked about Houston, James Harden's the leading scorer in the NBA.
Yeah.
Who is his rival? I mean, if you have a leading scorer, it should be a rival.
Yeah.
But you can't name a rival for him. I mean, the Toronto Raptors, they're an outstanding organization. One of the greatest fan bases in the NBA. When you think about a team that's been around now in their 25th year, in their 24th year, they won an NBA title. There's been many teams that have never hosted the Larry O'Brien Trophy. But congratulations to Toronto. You beat the Golden State Warriors. No knock against this city. Great people. Been to Toronto many times. Enjoyed that city and the fanfare and the food and the festivities in that city. One of the greatest caravanas in North America outside the Caribbean. So, I mean, the people of Toronto are marvelous. You think about it. They just had Larry Walker inducted into Major League Baseball Hall of Fame yesterday. Only the second Canadian to do that behind Fergie Jenkins. So you think about Canada. Canada is full of great athletes and great people.
And the people are so nice. Everybody I've ever met from Canada, very, very nice. So 76ers, the city of brotherly love, where everybody's mean, going up to Canada where everybody's nice. Big C, we'll see what happens with that score tonight. Sacramento Kings at the Detroit Pistons. The L.A. Clippers at the Atlanta Hawks. The Washington Wizards at the Miami Heat. L.A. Lakers got beat down in Beantown last night at Boston, Big C. Now they're playing in Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks. Now, it's interesting to me because I know Kobe scored like 80-something points. I think 81 points at the Garden. And we have LeBron James lead the scorer. He's going to score a lot of points, but he's not going to get close to what Kobe did. But people talked about LeBron going from when he was leaving Cleveland and then Miami. There was so much talk that he should have gone to New York because he would be the king of New York like he's the king of the NBA. Well, they have him in New York tonight, Big C. And maybe it's big for the media in New York, but it's a shame that there's such a bad team. Like, they were waiting for LeBron to show up, like New Orleans was waiting for Zion, and the Knicks are not going anywhere. But give me your feeling on LeBron being in New York. Is it a big deal, or is it just playing against another bad team, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, wherever LeBron goes, he's the big deal in the NBA, Charlton. He's chasing Kobe Bryant for the third place all-time on the scoring list in the NBA. He's 66 points behind Kobe. So if he can get 66 tonight, he will pass Kobe Bryant for third place all-time in the NBA as far as leading scorer.
Yeah.
And when you think about the top 5 scorers in NBA history, Charlton, they've all played with the Los Angeles Lakers. Kareem is number 1. Karl Malone is number 2. Kobe is number 3. LeBron is number 4. You got Michael Jordan at 5. But if you want to make it the top 6, Wilt Chamberlain comes in at 6. So 5 of the top 6 scorers all time in NBA history have donned the Lakers uniform.
Yeah, and that's amazing too. And when you think about the New York Knicks and how it's amazing how the Lakers are great on the West Coast. Golden State's been great the last several years on the West Coast. And when you go back to the East Coast, we got to look at Toronto, that's won a championship more recent than the New York Knicks on the East Coast. We look at the Philadelphia 76ers. They've won championships more recently than the New York Knicks. The Boston Celtics, they've won more championships recently than the New York Knicks. And, they're on the East Coast. Even the Miami Heat, when they had the great LeBron James, even though they're the Southeast, they're still an East Coast team that's won since the Knicks. So when we talk about being relevant and how New Orleans, I want them to stay relevant. I don't want that organization leaving the way Seattle left, the way Vancouver left, and the Sacramento Kings were talking about leaving. They did leave Kansas City, obviously. I want New York to be relevant, but they have everything that people say they should have. Why, in your opinion, can they not get people to go there? You always make that reference about why are certain high school kids going to certain colleges. Why won't anybody go to New York, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's been 49 years since the Knicks have won a championship. And they have this guy that owns a franchise named Dolan.
Yeah.
Jim Dolan. As long as he owns the Knicks franchise, Charlton, no free agent will go there. This owner is reveled by everybody in the NBA. He does nothing to make this team better. No player is excited about going there, even though they can make the money.
Yeah.
But you know that he's going to have his hand in the cookie jar, and he's going to mess up the Kool-Aid that they're trying to put together to get symmetry in a team. So you look at the New York Knicks over the last 2 decades, Charlton, they've done nothing.
Yeah.
Their last run was in 1994
Patrick
with
Ewing.
Patrick Ewing when they lost to the Houston Rockets
John Smart,
in the NBA Finals.
Yep.
Since then, they've become one of the doormats of the NBA. The last 5 years, they've picked in the top 5 in the draft. So this is an organization that doesn't know how to put together or draw free agents, Charlton. So no one is excited about going to New York. And that old thing about media market size, it doesn't matter anymore.
No.
It used to matter and be relevant 25, 30 years ago. But we have this thing called social media.
Yep.
You can be in Kansas and you're just as relevant as somebody in New York because it's about the number of followers. You look at LeBron. When he was in Cleveland, he had more followers on his social media than any other NBA player. And Cleveland's media market is nowhere near the top 10 in the United States.
Yeah.
And now that he's in L.A., he moved there for business as well as playing basketball.
Yeah.
New York, being the number one media market, is only about advertising. Because if you want an NBA player to be your marketing, he's going to be that. You think about Aaron Rodgers, you think about Chris Paul. They're State Farm. They control the networks on State Farm.
Yep.
Neither one of them is in a top 10 media market. You're going to tell me Milwaukee and Oklahoma City is relevant in media markets?
No, not at all.
It's about the outreach of social media.
Yeah, and they have their own marketing campaigns, like you mentioned, the social media and all the Facebooks and stick books and, like as you say, Kool-Aid books and all that other stuff too. So New York really is not a relevant city, even when it comes to, football, they'll make it that way, but not because they're winning championships. So the Lakers are at the Knicks. The Grizzlies are at the Celtics. Boston's always great when Boston wins. The Timberwolves at Chicago. The Denver Nuggets at the Houston Rockets. Something's been happening with their liftoff down in Houston, Big C. Indiana Pacers at the Phoenix Suns. And the Spurs at the Pelicans. I hope it's a great event tonight down in New Orleans. I know a lot of people love so much about the world of NBA basketball. And whether or not it's a popular sport, we're right now still in the heart of football, so people aren't going to find the love for the NBA until after the Super Bowl is over. That's just my opinion. But I wish everybody nothing but the best as they look forward to what's going to happen down in the great state of New Orleans, Louisiana. You mentioned Kansas. And Whoa Nelly, the great Keith Jackson, used to always talk about Whoa Nelly. And I remember you always said, what is it about Kansas that gets people to go there and play basketball? You talked about Chamberlain. There's so many great players. Manning went there. So many players that have gone to that great university out in the Midwest of nowhere. You talk about something for kids to do. There's nothing there, but something they're doing to get them there. There's also shenanigans going on about a player that got, ejected from a game. I don't like to really talk about minors when it comes to trouble, but we know what's happened in the game. Kansas versus Kansas State, a stupid fight. Young kids do stupid things. I don't know how I stand on it. I know people deserve second chances, especially with seeing what's going on in the White House. How about you handle the suspension stuff? We can't just say Self is off, not part of it because he has that environment. You got to blame the coach sometimes. People say don't blame the coach, but if you can't blame the coach for not keeping the kids in check, who do you blame, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, how do you blame a coach for the reaction of a player when the coach is on the sideline? These players, what I just mentioned earlier, through social media.
Yeah.
They have beefs through social media. We see that all the time where the news outlets are talking about athletes from their social media accounts where they're posting stuff. They're giving people billboard material all the time. And so you have to understand what goes on behind the scenes. We see the end product when players get into a tiff on the field.
Yeah.
But social media is driving a lot of this rift between modern-day players now. And I think it should be one of the things that universities and athletic departments need to look into, is that they have to limit a player on social media as far as what they post.
Yeah.
They need to put a suspension on the player on the team. The team needs to do that. If you post the wrong material through social media, everyone, you come out, even in the NFL draft last year, your buddy Nick Bosa, some things that he had tweeted.
Yeah.
And people he got a lot of flack for it.
Yeah.
As players do these things and they all want to use the excuse, well, I was young and didn't understand.
Right.
You understand. If you know how to push character and push that button called send,
yeah,
you understand what you're doing. So don't give me the crap that you didn't know what you were doing and you were young and dumb. If you were young and dumb, you're old and dumb.
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing because it is you. It is a blueprint of what you are. And so as we look at these players getting to these beefs, it's not like it used to be when players got into beefs.
Yeah.
It was something that players did spontaneously. Now it's a build-up through social media.
It's amazing social media. But I will take the opposite side of the fence. When you say you can't point the finger at Bill Self, I mean, Kitchens got fired in Cleveland because people said he lost control of the organization. There were people saying fire Mike Tomlin when Antonio Brown was acting a knucklehead in the locker room and pointing fingers at everybody. People said, well, Tomlin has lost control of the locker room. They didn't blame the players. They blamed the coach. So why do we not blame Self when they blame the Cleveland coach lost his job for it? Arizona fired their coach a couple of years ago after not even 1 year, one complete year. We've seen that happen before. The Denver Broncos, they've gotten rid of a coach. They gave him a lot of time. We've seen it where they blame the coach and not the players for not winning. Or when aberrant behavior happens, we've seen them fire coaches too, Big C. Why not Self? Your thoughts?
Because that's college versus professional. Professional, it's about instant results. When you look at the body of work that Bill Self has produced at Kansas and the players that he has brought in, the consistency that he's had in developing these young men, Charlton, this is the difference. He's a professor. When you look at a college coach, he is a professor. He's an employee of the university. He's not just a coach.
Yeah.
We look at him as a coach, but it goes far beyond that. But like I said, when you look at the mindset of young players today versus young players 30 and 40 years ago,
yeah,
you didn't have the type of crap that you get now consistently from young players. They're more about building their brand, their image through social media, looking at the number of followers that they have,
yeah,
creating risk on social media. So why not limit the social media of the players? Take it out of the coach's hand. The university said if you're going to characterize yourself in this type of behavior, then you're going to be suspended. The NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball, even hockey, has a thing in your contract through the Players Association called conduct detrimental. That's the reason why Antonio Brown will never play in the NBA, in the NFL again, because he's had conduct detrimental while he was a player and even since he's not been a player in the NBA. And you have to put that same thing on these players. You can't say, well, he's a young kid and didn't know. They're very calculating about what they do.
Yeah. Well, I do know if a child does something as a minor, they still blame the parents. And I know that oftentimes these coaches tell the parents, hey, I'm going to treat you just like you're my son, and I'm going to make sure I take care of you. I know players have to be responsible for themselves, too.
So look at this situation. When Cam Newton was down at the University of Florida, along with Tim Tebow, and Cam Newton was dismissed because he was stealing computers.
Yeah.
Should you have fired the head coach at that time also?
Well, sometimes you hold them accountable. Look at what happened to UCLA when they were over in China, and I think they were playing Georgia Tech, and somebody stole some sunglasses. I mean, you could get sunglasses everywhere in L.A. They don't have the same coach now that they had back in the day when that happened. It happened quietly, but they know how to move people around. Obviously, you can't blame the coaches for everything, but parents are held culpable for their minors, whether they know that or not, and sometimes, coaches too.
When you have a minor son that goes out and steals something, you should lock the parent up?
No,
because he wasn't with the minor son when he went out and stole that? Because, that's the argument that you're making, is that when your children are not in your possession and they're off doing something and they commit a crime, that the parent should be locked up because that child committed a crime, even though you told that child it was wrong over and over.
No one said lock them up. I'm saying if you Google the law, a parent, and if that kid's under 18 and that kid commits a crime, the parent's held accountable also. It's culpable. And I didn't know that until I talked to some law enforcement people. But I'm not saying fire Bill Self. I'm just saying Kitchens got fired because his players were acting up. The coach down in Arizona got fired a couple of years because they didn't win. People were saying get rid of Tomlin. And I know that they'll bring players in. It goes back to how did they get to Kansas in the first place? Because Big C, there's still some shenanigans around that player.
Well, if you look at the Cleveland Browns, they've had 3 head coaches in 22 months.
Yeah.
Why do they have 3 head coaches in 22 months with the Cleveland Browns? They fired I'm trying to remember.
Hugh Jackson. Yeah.
They fired Hugh Jackson. They fired Freddie Kitchens. Now they're on their 3rd coach in 22 months. I mean, this is the history of the Cleveland Browns. Since they've come back into the NFL, they've had 20 coaches. What is the reason for firing 20 coaches since 1999?
Yeah, that's just a lot of function and dysfunction going on. But it's all fair in love and war, and it's always worth talking about, especially when it comes to dealing with the minors. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, I want to jump into the realm of football and talk about some quarterbacks. There's so much talk about who's going to be playing where. We'll take the Big C timeout, and we'll come back in just a moment, and we hope that you'll come back and join us in just a moment. All right, we are back from what's called the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause, and you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. The apps that I really love are called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You were here. Welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Just don't set your TV on fire like some good old boys do when the reception doesn't come in. It's not the TV's fault. I want to just bring it up. I know we talked about it yesterday, Big C. I would love to see Tom Brady finish out in New England. I would love to see Jameis Winston get the chance to stay down in Tampa and work things out and make him a better quarterback. I know Aaron's can do that, but sometimes they don't have the discipline to try to put up with players and have them have that learning curve. I would love to see that happen. But when I bring up a couple of teams, I just want your thought, and we don't know. They still have things to decide with their contracts and with their agents, but the Brady effect, it impacts several teams. We talked about the Chargers being one of them. I would still say that he will be a part of the New England Patriots. Phillip Rivers, he's going to be leaving, my opinion. I don't think there's any reason to keep him. And I think the Chargers got to go young. Any more traction with you think Brady staying in New England or having the chance to come out to the West Coast? Whether I hear the weather's nicer on the West Coast, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, his best opportunity to reach the Super Bowl again would be in New England. His second best opportunity would be in San Diego because they have the weapons in place
in LA,
to allow him to continue his career at a high level.
Yeah.
New England has to make some drastic adjustments. Wherever Brady goes, it's only going to be a 1 to 2 year fix, whether he stays in New England or goes elsewhere. He's at that age where he's not going to be able to play. at a very high level.
Right.
So this is where, you look at the rubber meeting the road. What does Tom Brady want? Everybody's making the, decisions for Tom Brady. Robert Kraft, when you talk about being a parent, Robert Kraft is like a parent to Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Whatever Tom Brady wants to do, Robert Kraft will allow it to occur.
Well, let's look at Phillip Rivers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's some talk that Bruce Arians is intrigued by Rivers going there. We know he's worked with Jameis Winston. Jameis had a lot of, I think he passed for over 5,000 yards this year. Imagine if you could just curtail the interceptions to less than 15, Big C. And he's worked with Carson Palmer. So I don't think Parsons ever passed for over 5,000 yards in a season. I may be wrong. I still think Winston would be the best choice there because you already know his good side. Just eliminate the bad. Phillip Rivers, he can't find the accurate man downfield either, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the thing with Jameis Winston is that his propensity to throw interceptions.
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Leftwich worked with him consistently all year long, Charlton. And the one thing that he couldn't get over is throwing interceptions. He's the first quarterback to be in the 30-30 club with 5,000 yards. So that's one of the things. I think that becomes personal with Jameis Winston as far as throwing interceptions.
Yeah.
It's something that you don't coach out of a player, Charlton. He just has to realize he can't do it.
Can't do it. Let's look at the Raiders going down to the desert. If you look at the Oakland Raiders, they're still going to hold practice, at least in the preseason, from what I hear in the OTAs. They're going to be up in Northern California, up in Napa, Big C. At the same time, I guess they'll be flying into Vegas before they set up shop fully in Las Vegas. But there's talk that Winston and John Gruden may get along, even though Gruden allegedly likes Derek Carr. I don't really know if that's the case or not. But Derek Carr, if he's not there, do you see that as a landing spot for Winston? But why would you want a guy that throws a lot of interceptions, even more so than the guy you would be getting rid of, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, right now it's about the salary cap when you look at Jameis Winston. What is he going to be willing to accept? Is he going to go someplace and potentially be a starter, or is he going to be a backup if he leaves Tampa Bay? That's what it boils down to right now in the NFL. You can bring in a young quarterback.
Yeah.
You draft in the first round. You got him for 5 years. You got him for 5 years for less than $30 million.
Yeah.
A lot of teams allow themselves to build the perimeter when you draft these young quarterbacks because you only have $30 million invested in them over a 5-year span.
Yeah.
And you bring in an older veteran, Charlton, you're talking about giving him somewhere between $20 and $30 million.
Yeah.
And you don't have the money to build the integral parts that you need. So that's one of the things that people look at when they go on the free agent market.
Well, we look at the Washington Redskins. We know that they have Dan Snyder loves Dwayne Haskins. That's why they drafted him. But he brought in as a defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio, who was coach of the Raiders the last time the Raiders went to the playoffs. And Del Rio likes Carr. But I don't think you get rid of Haskins. I think a lot of the times it's just people talking about what they might want to do. But could you see that situation happening? I would think that would be a bad move for Snyder. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Washington Redskins actually have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Alex Smith is still on the roster with Colt McCoy and Case Keenum.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of money tied up in quarterbacks. So you have a lot of dead money if you cut one of these quarterbacks in Washington.
If you think about Teddy Bridgewater, probably the most talented backup out there. People talk so much about Jimmy Garoppolo, and they talked about at the same time when Aaron Rodgers was sitting on the bench for the great Brett Favre and also Brady when he got his chance because he got Bledsoe got injured. So if you think about Teddy Bridgewater, he's not going to stay in New Orleans. People can say he wants to learn under the great Drew Brees, but he's in his mid-20s. Guys want to play. This is the guy he's undefeated. Think about it. Undefeated playing for New Orleans this year, Big C. He can't want to stay there. You see a place for him to land. Some people say if Brady leaves, maybe New England. Your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot of open waters out there when you think about Teddy Bridgewater. And you can look at some of the teams with young quarterbacks that are struggling, that are still under their rookie contract.
Yeah.
There's nothing against him going to a place like Miami, like Chicago, New York, either one of those, Jets or Giants, where those young quarterbacks are struggling. These are the things you look at when you got a quarterback like Teddy Bridgewater.
Yep.
He was the highest paid backup in the NFL last year to sit in New Orleans, and he paid dividends because he went out and won the 5 games that they asked him to play in, Charlton.
Yeah.
But Teddy Bridgewater is having that itch to want to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay might be a good fit. You think about the tools that they have down there. how efficient he is with the football,
yeah,
I can see him taking over Jameis Winston in Tampa.
that would be someone's going to land a star player when they give him a chance.
And he's from Florida.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that would be a good fit. I still would love to see Jameis Winston stay there, just my opinion. You know, Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow is the unanimous choice by a lot of people. And as great as he was in college, he's not going to throw against college defensive backs when he gets to the NFL. But I think he's still a player worth taking. He said he wanted to play for Ohio. Well, he can still play in Ohio. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, when you think about Joe Burrow, what Joe Burrow did in college this year, we've never seen from a college quarterback. And Cincinnati would be foolish not to take him number one overall. Joe Burrow has that keenness that he's intelligent as a quarterback. It's something we haven't seen. He throws players open. He has the anticipation of a Grizzly veteran. One of the things people don't understand about Joe Burrow is that he's 23 years old. So he's not that 19, 20-year-old kid coming into the NBA, the NFL, and doesn't have any mental savvy about it.
Yeah.
He's mature along with his age. So him coming into the league, Charlton, I think he can still perform at the level that he did in college. It's just about the players that are around him. The anticipation that he has with football is something we haven't seen in a long time of a young man coming out of college into the NFL.
Yeah, he's done it against the top talent in the conference, in the SEC, as well as when they played Texas and also in the bowl game versus Clemson. I look at the Chicago Bears, and there's so much talk about Mitch Trubisky. They were loving Mitch Trubisky last year. They were hating Mitch Trubisky this year. Andy Dalton, we know if Burrow's going to be drafted by Cincinnati, unless they do something foolish and decide not to, then we know that Dalton's not going to want to sit around. There's some talk that he might have a home in Chicago, but Trubisky is still going to start week 1, but maybe not week 3 if he doesn't improve in the first 2 games. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, we saw what the Tennessee Titans did with Ryan Tannehill. They brought in a veteran quarterback to back up a struggling young quarterback. Also, when you think about Mariota, he's going to be a free agent in another month.
Yeah.
So, and I see Tennessee franchising Tannehill. But you look at the same situation that could occur in Chicago. Bringing in one of these veterans that's out there, bring him in on a 1-year, 2-year contract to see if he can compete with Trubisky and push it and see that the best man plays. But if you're bringing a veteran, you're not invested in him for 5 years. You're only going to invest in him for 1 or 2 years. There's a lot of job openings in the NFL.
Yep. There's a lot of job openings in the NFL. And speaking of that, I want to take you up north with the friend. If you ever have a toothache, they have an owner that can get you something to take away the pain, Big C. Indianapolis coach, they have Jacoby Brissett. There's some talk that Marcus Mariota might be a good fit. They're the same type of quarterbacks, in my opinion. Both men just need some grooming. But Brissett's set to make about $16 million. They might give a downgraded paycheck if they bring in Mariota. But I think Brissett, if you want to win, quit trying to get guys on sale and pay people if you think they can do it for you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they signed Brissett to an extension last year when Luck retired. So I think that the coach is going to stay pat with him. They had a lot of injuries on the offense, you know, with Mack and Hilton.
Yeah.
Those guys were down, and it cost them down the stretch, Charlton. They had some beat-up players on defense. Brissett got injured also. So I think if he can stay healthy all year long, they're going to push the Titans and the Texans for that division.
Yeah. Let me take you down south to Miami. We know Super Bowl 54 is going to be up in Fort Lauderdale. But the Miami Dolphins, they did beat the New England Patriots at the end of the season, and it was a great Ryan Fitzpatrick that not as consistent all the time, but he's a quarterback that can mentor somebody. If there's thinking that Burrow's going to go to Cincinnati, if Tua's going to go to Miami, is he injured goods? I know people can say, "Oh, he's just as good as he was before he was injured, before he needed surgery." You know, Big C, not many people can say that surgery's going to end your career now because so many guys come back from torn ACLs and everything else, Big C. But do you like Tua down in the Miami system? Would you want to bring him in and have him sit a year? Or do you like Randy Tannehill? He went and beat Tom Brady in New England, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Tannehill is not going back to Miami. When you look at the Miami Dolphins, they have 3 first-round draft picks. So this is a team that's loaded. And, you know, whether they stay with Fitzpatrick, they also got Josh Rosen on the roster, Charlton. So it's not a team that's void at quarterback. I still see them drafting a quarterback in the first round. When you have 3 first-round draft picks, you have your choice. You got Jordan Love out there. You got Tua. You got Herbert. There's several quarterbacks that can go in the first round, and you can pencil them in for your future.
Yeah.
So Miami is one of those teams that's playing with house money right now when it's looking at the quarterback situation. I don't see any rookie quarterback coming into the league this year taking their team to the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a very strong point, Big C. The New Orleans Saints, it's even foolish, but people talk about Drew Brees. He's over 40, but, like, so what? He can still throw the football, Big C. He can still throw. They were 13-3 regular season. No need talking about him. But do you bring in – we know Bridgewater's going to leave if he's smart, but Taysom Hill's probably going to stay because he has more time to be a multi-dimensional player. But there's no talk about replacing Drew Brees, or am I naive, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I think Drew Brees will get a one-year run in New Orleans because Taysom Hill is ready to play. I think you'll see a lot of switching between those two quarterbacks in the upcoming season. When you think about Taysom Hill, he could probably be the most talented quarterback in the NFL when you look at all of what he could do. I know people rave about Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
But I see Taysom Hill being very close to what Deshaun Watson can do and just as good a passer.
Carolina Panthers, do you stay with Cam Newton? He took them to their last Super Bowl. We know he's had some injuries. Guys can come back from injuries. But to me, there's something, it feels like Cam Newton, it may be, if you look at, in Eli Manning stepping down, they both have that Super Bowl experience. I think about Cam, and he hasn't. But I want to get your thoughts as a defensive player. Emotionally, does he still have it? Is he hiding something pain-wise? Your thoughts?
I don't know if it's pain that he's hiding. Cam has been, the past couple of years more about his brand than he has been about improving his ability to play the game.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk about with social media before with these college athletes. People spend so much time in social media as an athlete these days other than honing their skills. Look at the players who are not spending the time on social media, putting all the gar on for the press conferences and all that. Look at their performance on the field.
Yeah.
If you dress like your performance, and I see the best players, best quarterbacks in the league, they don't get all dressed up for a press conference.
No.
They come in very relaxed.
Yeah.
And that's not Cam. So Cam is more about his fashion than he is about his playing ability.
Yeah, and so as we move to another team down in the South, in the AFC, Big C, Tennessee Titans, Ryan Tannehill. So you like him, staying there as you talked about earlier. Mariota and Tannehill, there's not enough locker rooms for both of them, but if you think they're sticking with Tannehill, do you agree with that, or do you think bring in Mariota, or even look to move on from both of them? Tannehill only threw for, less than 100 yards twice in the playoff game, Big C, and when they needed him to throw for 300 yards, he couldn't do it. Your thoughts?
Well, their offense wasn't designed for them to throw the ball, Charlton. It was about running the ball with Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
I think that the Tennessee Titans will franchise Ryan Tannehill. You put him on a one-year lease. You'll go out, and there's going to be plenty of free agent quarterbacks that you can bring in with a contract that is not going to be what the franchise tag is on Tannehill. You can get a veteran quarterback on a 3-year deal, and if Tannehill doesn't work out, then you still have another veteran that you can go through.
You still got another veteran you can go through. So let me ask you this thought about a veteran. The Jacksonville Jaguars, we know they have the great Nick Foles. I want to say Super Bowl champion Nick Foles, Big C. We have Gardner Minshew as well. I don't know if they're really sold on Nick Foles. I think they have more belief in Gardner Minshew. Down the road, long term, who would you like staying in Jacksonville, the quarterback, Big C?
Well, I think they'll keep both of them. I think they'll start the season with Gardner Minshew. Nick Foles unfortunately got hurt last year in the first half of the first game, and he never caught his stride. But I think that they'll go with Minshew and see how far they can go with him, because you already have the money invested in Nick Foles. If you trade him, that's dead money.
Yeah.
So you keep him on the roster. Minshew is not even costing you $1 million. So you got the best of both worlds.
You got the best of both worlds, Big C. I want to bring up the Dallas Cowboys. You have Dak Prescott. The only question is how much will he end up costing Jerry Jones? I think he can feel like you can't say disrespected when you're a multimillionaire. He can make many more millions, and Dallas has to do something more with their defense, more so than their offense, just my opinion. They were talking about Dallas has so much talent, but that's because everything's bigger in Texas. They were really no more talented than anybody else that did not make the playoffs, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they're going to franchise tag Dak Prescott down in Dallas. They're not going to sign him to a long-term contract. I mean, Dak's best position is let him franchise it. Don't show up.
Yeah.
Go down to Cabo, hang out like Ezekiel Elliott was doing.
Yeah.
See what they have in the cupboard.
Yeah.
They have nothing behind Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
So Dak Prescott has all the power in Dallas right now. They'll franchise him. I would refuse to sign the franchise, not show up at training camp, but Dak is a team player. He's going to show up. But I wouldn't sign the franchise tender. I would make them give me that 4 to 5 year long-term contract because they've gotten you at a discount for these first 3 years anyway.
Yeah, they got them all sell anyway. They say, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? I've heard older ladies say that. I want to just step into this talk about, you know, Big Ben Roethlisberger. Is he washed up? Is he going to come back? We know he had a hitch in his giddy up. He's back on track for a full recovery from the elbow surgery in the offseason. And he's still older. He's still not mobile. He still has a strong arm. And I don't know if guys respect him anymore. Just my opinion. Maybe it's just Antonio Brown didn't respect him. But still, we know his background, Big C. They can hide it all they want to. Do the Steelers move on and get younger, or are they still trying to get that old car fixed up, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, Ben Roethlisberger will be back next year, and he'll be back as good as ever, Charlton, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you look at the team that Mike Tomlin has put together in Pittsburgh, the only thing that was missing was a quarterback. He had no consistency in Hodges and Rudolph at quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger brings stability back to the organization to get the heat off of Mike Tomlin's back, and the Pittsburgh Steelers will win that division.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any heat on Tomlin's back, Big C. This is a lot of media stuff, but that man has been very successful as a coach. I want to take it to your friend, the great John Elway. This one's for John. The great late Pat Bowen mentioned that at the Super Bowl after Terrell Davis ran for over 200 yards on 3 quarters. Drew Lock, Denver Broncos, Case Keenum. Lock showed a lot of promise, Big C, when he was healthy in 2019. After hiring Pat Sherman to run the offense, will that help? Do you like what do the Denver Broncos had? Like 8 different quarterbacks since Elway stepped over in Denver. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Drew Lock is healthy. He will be the starter on opening day in Denver. They've invested in him. They feel that he's the guy of their future. He has that strong arm just like Josh Allen in Buffalo. He has mobility, Charlton. He just needs time. He's just like Dwayne Haskins. Did not get enough reps, and now that he can have a full offseason to recover and work with the offense and get into training camp, Charlton, he will be the starter day one in Denver.
Let me ask you, before I get onto some things that just make sense, the great Eli Manning announced that he's going to announce retirement on Friday. Could have waited for after the Super Bowl. I don't know why he would wait. Why we wouldn't wait until after the Super Bowl. I mean, maybe he just wants some attention. But he was a great story for the New York Giants. Obviously, his family, you know, I guess football monarchy, you could say, Big C, the patriarchs of the NFL for quarterbacks with Manning, Archie, and then Peyton, and now Eli. Give me your feeling. He's only a 500 quarterback. I'm not trying to diminish anything. But most guys that get 500, well, it's enough to get into the Hall of Fame unless you're a man of color like Jim Plunkett. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Eli Manning, it's time for Eli to go. And when is the right time to announce your retirement? I think you get it out of the way now. It doesn't interfere with the hype going into the Super Bowl about speculation. It allows the New York Giants to move on and get stable along with, you know, Daniel Jones and whoever else they want to bring in as a backup to Daniel Jones. But Eli Manning, by announcing his retirement now, he gets to ride off into the sunset because the focus is on the Super Bowl and not about him. Yeah,
he has 2-time Super Bowl champion. Record is 117-17 in the postseason. He was 8-4 in the postseason. He had an incredible, postseason. He got 2 Super Bowl championships. A lot of people can't say that. Obviously, not really the face of New York, though. And still, when you think about New York quarterbacks, you can say he's the face of New York, but I still think a lot of people think of Broadway Joe, even though he's many, many moons retired. But he's still that iconic figure on the East Coast. I do wish Eli Manning nothing but the best. Some of the other quarterbacks that are already set, Patrick Mahomes, he's going to get closer to the $45 million. Do you think that's real, or do you think that's just fool's gold, Big C? Your thoughts?
I don't think that any team will pay a quarterback $45 million. I think Patrick Mahomes will be more in the 35 to $37 million range. He's not going to get the $40 million. I know the media likes to hype that up.
Yeah.
But Patrick Mahomes, like any other quarterback out there, you got to realize you got to have teammates and pieces around you.
Yeah.
And it's been proven in the NFL already. you're giving a guy too much money, then you can't put the pieces in there.
Yeah.
$2 million a game is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And there's a couple quarterbacks making $2 million a game.
Yeah.
But are they being productive? Pat Mahomes has done a lot of things that nobody else has ever done. He will exceed what Russell Wilson got, Charlton, but I don't see him getting over $40 million in a season. I think 37 will be the cap.
That's a lot of money. If he wins the Super Bowl this year, maybe Lee Steinberg can get him that money. Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, NFL MVP, just turned 23. Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson, an MVP contender every year. Houston, Texas, Deshaun Watson, in line for a big payday this offseason. Would you give Deshaun Watson that kind of money? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you're going to have to up on his contract. You think about his productivity since he's been with the Texans. Dan O'Brien is the reason why he hasn't gotten farther. But you also think that the head coach is also the GM in Houston.
Yeah.
So his job is based on what Deshaun Watson doing. And he's not going to fire himself.
No.
So he's going to pay Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, they're gonna pay the money. Philadelphia Eagles, Carson Wentz, already extended for the franchise quarterback. I hope he can stay healthy next year. He's never been healthy in any season. The Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers, does he still have what it takes? We'll see what happens with him. Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray, top overall pick his rookie year. I think he played decent. He'll probably play better coming up. Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford, maybe the most overpaid player that's considered a franchise guy. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, there's speculation that Matthew Stafford may not be back. With the severe back injury that he had with the broken vertebrae, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's a question. Do you want to continue playing and risk not being able to walk in 10 to 15 years? So Matthew Stafford is going to be a huge question mark when it comes to the draft for the Detroit Lions. Also, free agency is something that they'll be looking at as far as a quarterback. Does Mariota fit their system? He's the type of quarterback that they could utilize. Even Jameis Winston.
Yeah, they have a lot of opportunity. The San Francisco 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo, they're headed to the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens. Will he throw for over 100 yards in the Super Bowl? In Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan, he got over on everybody. He'll pocket $75 million in less than 2 years. That's a huge contract. And so we wish everybody nothing but the best. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I love called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Los Angeles Rams, Jared Goff, 1 year into a record-setting extension, and they missed the playoffs. Big C, did the money blind them? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they had a lot of injuries with the Rams. Gurley's wasn't up to snuff. The receivers, they lost both of those, Cooks and Woods. Cooper Kupp wasn't healthy all year long. They lost their tight end, and the defense had a hard time covering people. When you look at his numbers warranted the contract that he received.
Yeah. Kirk Cousins, your favorite player for the Minnesota Vikings, the Purple People Eaters. Seems like a paycheck eater machine, Big C. Into the final year of the market, going 3 years, fully guaranteed deal, $84 million, a lot of money. And then you have, what do you think about your cousin getting $84 million, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you take the money when you can. That's what the franchise tag brought him. He had a huge bidding market for him, Charlton. I think the Vikings have realized that they overpaid and they got shysted on the deal. Kirk Cousins will be there for that final year of the contract, but he will not get anywhere near the money he got over the 3 years in Minnesota.
Cleveland Browns, Baker Mayfield expected to make a giant leap. What they say, one small step for man, one giant leap for the Cleveland Browns. Is he disappointing, Big C? Your thoughts?
He has been thus far. I mean, when you look at the draft, Charlton, and Lamar Jackson did not get drafted ahead of Baker Mayfield. Josh Allen did not get drafted ahead of Baker Mayfield. If you were to go back and redo the draft, Charlton, there would have been quarterbacks taken in front of him. And he has to get his mindset together. He is too much about endorsing himself other than and what he says to the media versus bettering his playing skills.
Yep, very well said. New York Jets, Sam Darnold, looking for more consistency. I don't know if we're going to find it. He threw a lot of interceptions at USC. Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen. Also, they had to wash his mouth out with soap because he couldn't remember how he used to always use the bad words when he was a young boy. Big C, New York Giants, Daniel Jones must be happy now that Eli is no longer breathing down his back. Can he turn things around and get him into the playoffs next year, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's about the coaching staff with the New York Giants. They need a lot of players. That offensive line, they're going to need some help. The defense, they've had a lot of problems with the Giants. They had no pass rush. Daniel Jones is probably the second best quarterback in the state of New York. I don't know about the Darnold kid at
the Jets.
New York Jets. He reminds me a lot of Jameis Winston. He's inconsistent.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones has a better upside to me right now than Sam Darnold.
Well, I look for a lot of great things happening in sports. Joe Flacco, will he be back with the Broncos? Probably not. He'll find himself on somebody's backup. Hopefully, he does have Super Bowl experience and a championship. Zion Williamson, I hope he has a great play tonight. I hope the young man can stay healthy. It's all fair in love and war. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, we're 5 days away from all the teams arriving down in Miami for the Super Bowl and all the hype and build-up. You know, we're going to have to settle for basketball until we get to the big game on Sunday.
You got to get to the big game on Sunday, but you can have the big game every day, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.